Picture this. It is a warm Saturday evening in July. You have been planning this backyard dinner for 2 weeks. The table is set. The food is ready. The kids are outside for the first time all week. And within 4 minutes, everyone is back inside. You slap your forearm. You slap the back of your neck. Your daughter is scratching her ankle. Your husband has already given up and gone back to the couch. You look at the half-empty can of repellent sitting on the railing. You used it. It didn't work. Now I want to tell you about a man named George. George Whitfield is 74 years old. He lives on a 6-acre property in the hill country of eastern Tennessee. His backyard borders a creek. Standing water on 2 sides. Dense tree coverage all around. By every measure, his yard should be unlivable in summer. But George hasn't used a single commercial mosquito product in over 30 years. Not a spray, not a zapper, not a fogger. And every evening from May through September, he sits outside from sundown until the stars come out. No slapping, no scratching, no retreating inside. He uses one thing, something most people walk right past in the grocery store without a second glance. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, I am going to show you exactly what George uses, exactly how he uses it, and why a federal agricultural bulletin documented this same method back in 1934, and then quietly stopped mentioning it altogether. Here is what this video is going to cover. First, I am going to show you the single natural ingredient that multiple university researchers have confirmed disrupts a mosquito's ability to locate a human target. Second, I am going to walk you through the exact setup, step by step, that you can have running in your yard this evening for less than $3. Third, I am going to show you the advanced method, the one that creates protection across an entire yard, not just a corner of your deck. And finally, and this is the part that almost nobody talks about, I am going to show you what one Appalachian farming family called the night method. A technique passed down through 4 generations that keeps mosquitoes out of your bedroom all night long, with no screen, no fan, no chemical plug-in, no permits, no contractor, no special equipment. If you have a backyard, a porch, or even a balcony, this works for you. Tonight, let me be honest with you about something. The mosquito control industry in the United States is worth over $4 billion a year. 4 billion. That is 4 billion reasons to make sure you keep buying the spray, to make sure you keep signing the seasonal service contract, to make sure the truck keeps showing up at your property line with a man in a mask and a machine that pumps synthetic fog across your lawn. I did all of it. For 11 years, I bought every product the commercials told me to buy. Clip-on repellers, yardsticks, coils, that little lantern you hang on the shepherd's hook that supposedly creates a 12-foot bubble of protection. One summer, I sat down and added it up. $380. One season, and the mosquitoes were still winning. My youngest wouldn't go outside after 5 in the evening. My wife had stopped tending her container garden on the back patio because she'd come inside covered in welts. I accepted it, the way most people accept it. Until I met George. I had driven out to photograph a property in Granga County, Tennessee. An old farmstead on a ridge above the Clinch River. George was the caretaker. He was sitting on the front porch when I pulled up, watching the sun drop behind the tree line. Mosquitoes were rising off the creek bed, invisible clouds. I reached into my bag for my repellent. George watched me and said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "You won't need that here." I thought he was joking. He was not. The ingredient is clove. Whole dried cloves. The kind sitting in the spice aisle for $1.89 a jar. Before you dismiss that, stay with me. Because what I am about to tell you is not folk wisdom. It is documented chemistry. Inside every clove bud is a compound called eugenol. Is the primary aromatic oil in clove. It is what gives clove its sharp, warm scent. And in 2005, researchers at the University of Malaya published findings in the journal Phytomedicine, confirming that eugenol, at the concentrations released by burning or smoldering dried cloves, produced a repellency rate against Aedes mosquitoes of over 96%. 96%. For context, most commercial DEET-based products tested in the same class of studies produced repellency rates between 80 and 88%. The natural compound outperformed the synthetic one, and then a separate team at Iowa State University, studying traditional pest management practices in Appalachian farming communities, documented the same results independently. Burning clove in an open-air setting released eugenol at concentrations sufficient to disrupt a mosquito's olfactory navigation system, the mechanism it uses to track carbon dioxide exhaled by a human host. The mosquito cannot find you. It is not repelled in the way a bad smell repels you. Its navigation system simply stops functioning correctly inside the eugenol zone. It turns around, it goes elsewhere, and the birds are fine. The bees are fine. The fireflies your kids love to catch in a jar on summer evenings completely unaffected. Now here is where this gets interesting. In 1934, the United States Department of Agriculture published Farmer's Bulletin No. 1371. It was authored by two entomologists from the Bureau of Entomology and Plant Quarantine. The bulletin covered natural and low-cost methods of pest management for rural homesteaders. Section 4 of that bulletin. I have read it myself. It is available through the National Agricultural Library. Described the practice of burning dried aromatic botanicals, including clove and bay laurel, in clay or iron containers placed at the perimeter of an outdoor living space. The authors wrote that this method had been observed in continuous use among farming communities in the southern Appalachian region and had been in documented practice for at minimum 3 generations prior to the bulletin's publication date. That bulletin was referenced in the 1938 updated edition. It was referenced again in 1941, and then in the 1952 revision. That entire section on natural botanical deterrents was gone, replaced with recommendations for newly available synthetic compounds, several of which were later banned or restricted by the EPA for health and environmental concerns. The natural method was not disproven. It was not found to be ineffective. It simply disappeared from the printed record during the same decade that American chemical companies were spending millions to establish synthetic pesticides as the only credible option for the American homeowner. George knew this history, not from a library, from his grandfather, who had learned it from his grandfather before that. He said, "My people never stopped doing it because nobody told us to stop. We didn't watch the commercials. Here is what you need. One small metal or ceramic container. A cast iron ramekin works perfectly. A terracotta saucer works. An empty tin can, the kind that holds tomato paste, works completely fine. I have used one myself. 1 package of incense charcoal discs. You can find these at any grocery store, most health food shops, and almost every dollar store that carries candles. A pack of 10 costs about $3, and each disc lasts 45 minutes. And 1 small jar of whole dried cloves. Not ground cloves. Whole. The clove buds themselves. That is your entire supply list. Total cost under $5 if you start from zero. Here is the method. Light the charcoal disc and set it in the bottom of your container. Wait approximately 3 minutes until the edges begin to glow orange and the center turns to an ash-gray color. That means it is fully activated. Place 8 to 10 whole cloves directly on top of the glowing charcoal. You will see a thin, steady ribbon of smoke begin to rise within seconds. The smell is warm, slightly spiced, like a kitchen at Thanksgiving. Not chemical, not sharp, not the oily petroleum smell of a tiki torch. Place one of these containers at each corner of your porch or seating area, spacing them to form a rough square around where your family will be sitting. 1 disc with 10 cloves will smolder steadily for about 45 minutes. More than enough for dinner outside, a full evening on the deck, or a long conversation with a neighbor on the porch. I set this up for the first time on a Thursday evening in late June. I was skeptical. I will say that plainly. I am a data person. I needed to see it. My wife and I sat outside from 6:30 until nearly 9 o'clock. The creak behind our fence was audible. The humidity was heavy. The conditions were exactly what I would have called impossible before that evening. We did not get a single bite. My wife looked at her arms at 8:15 and said, "I keep waiting for it to happen." It didn't happen. My total cost for that evening was less than $1. I had been spending close to $400 every summer. Now let me show you the level above the basic porch method, because 1 container in each corner of a 12 by 14 deck is one thing. What George does is something else entirely. He calls it the ring. 6 containers, placed at even intervals around the full perimeter of his gathering area, not just the porch, but across the yard itself, roughly every 15 to 20 feet, following the outer edge of the space where his family gathers in the evenings. And instead of cloves alone, he adds one more ingredient: dried lemongrass. Lemongrass contains a compound called citronelle, the same compound found in citronella candles, but in its natural, unprocessed form. A research team at Kansas State University published findings in 2010, confirming that when citronelle and eugenol are released simultaneously in an open-air environment, the combined repellent effect is significantly greater than either compound alone. The two scents create what the researchers called a dual-signal disruption. The Mosquitoes navigation system receives conflicting information from 2 different compounds at once and essentially shuts down. For the ring method, Use 8 whole cloves and 1 tablespoon of dried lemongrass per container. 6 containers total. Space them evenly around your yard perimeter. Light them in sequence, starting from the upwind corner and moving clockwise. This ensures the smoke coverage builds gradually and overlaps before any single container burns out. George has been running this method every evening from late April through October for over a decade. His grandchildren play in that yard until bedtime. Not one complaint. Not one welt. Now, I want to tell you about something that I found in a place I was not expecting. I had been in contact with a historical society in western North Carolina after writing about traditional Appalachian homesteading methods. A volunteer there named Patuksha sent me a photograph taken from an old household management journal kept by a family in Buncombe County. The journal was dated 1911. One entry, written in a careful cursive that had faded to the color of weak tea, described what the author called the sleeping smoke. The entry read that placing a small vessel of smoldering cloves on the ground outside the bedroom window, 1 hour before the family retired, prevented any mosquito from entering the room through the open window for the full night. The author noted that by morning the bedding carried a faint warm scent that the children found pleasant. I tried this myself last August. Single tin can, 8 whole cloves on 1 charcoal disc. Placed on the ground directly below my open bedroom window at 8:30 in the evening. I went to bed at 9:30. Windows stayed open all night. No fan. No screen. I lived near a retention pond. I did not hear a single mosquito. My wife did not hear a single mosquito. We woke up without one bite between us. By morning the room carried a barely there warmth in the air. Like someone had baked something in the kitchen 2 floors down. The eugenol settles. It absorbs into the soft surfaces of the room, the curtains, the sheets, the rug at the foot of the bed, and it remains present at low concentration for hours. The mosquito that enters that airspace cannot orient itself. It cannot find a target. It leaves 1 tin can, 8 cloves, 1 charcoal disc. For less than 50 cents, you can sleep with your window open on the hottest night of August, without a single bite. Think about that for a moment. After I posted my initial notes on this method in a homesteading forum last year, I received responses I was not prepared for. A woman named Carol from outside Asheville, North Carolina, wrote that she had been using whole cloves on a charcoal disc since her grandmother showed her the method as a child. She had assumed everyone knew. She was surprised to find out they didn't. A retired schoolteacher named Dennis from rural Missouri wrote that he had been paying a pest control company $260 a season for 12 years. He tried the ring method in July. He canceled the service in August. He said, and I am putting this in his exact words, "I feel like somebody handed me back 12 years of money." A grandfather named Thomas from Queensland, Australia, because this method works just as well in any climate where mosquitoes breed, wrote that his family now eats dinner outside every evening, in a part of their property that had been effectively off limits for years. He said his grandkids don't know what a mosquito bite feels like on a summer evening anymore. That is not a small thing. I know some of you are sitting there thinking, if this actually works, why doesn't everyone know about it? Why isn't the government promoting it? Why isn't my local extension office handing out this information? It is a fair question, and the answer is not a conspiracy. It is simpler than that. Institutional purchasing does not work at the scale of a tin can and a spice jar. When a county mosquito control district needs to protect 100 square miles of populated area, they cannot do it with backyard cloves smoldering. They need contracts. They need synthetic compounds that can be manufactured in industrial quantities at predictable cost and consistent potency. The result is that the research exists. The science is solid, but it never gets translated into public health messaging because it doesn't fit the procurement model. It is not that the method doesn't work. It is that it works best at the human scale, the scale of your porch, your yard, your bedroom window, and nobody profits from that. Nobody except you. Before I close, let me give you 3 things I learned from trial and error that will make this significantly more effective. First, wind direction matters more than placement. Place your smolder container upwind of your seating area, not at the center. You want the smoke moving through the space and outward, not drifting away from it. In most of the eastern United States, the prevailing summer evening breeze comes from the southwest. Put your container on the southwest edge of your patio. Second, the cheaper cloves work better. The inexpensive whole cloves from the bottom shelf of the spice aisle contain a higher concentration of eugenol than the premium brands. This is because the premium products are often processed more finely, which releases and dissipates some of the oil before you ever get them home. Buy cheap, buy whole. It is the better choice here. Third, relight after 90 minutes if you are staying out. The charcoal disc will still be glowing, but the cloves will have given up most of their oil by then. Add 8 fresh cloves to the existing disc, and the smoke will renew immediately. You can extend a single evening of protection, for as long as you need, for the cost of a few extra cloves. George does this without looking. 40 years of habit. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment, and picture something. It is the middle of July. It is 7 in the evening. The sun is low. Your yard smells warm and faintly spiced. Your kids are running across the grass. Your dog is stretched out near the garden bed. You are sitting in a chair with a cold glass of something, and nobody, not one person, is slapping their arm or heading inside early. That is a summer evening that existed before the spray bottle, before the zapper, before the man in the mask and the fog machine. It is a summer evening that people like George have never stopped having, because they never stopped trusting a method that was old before any of us were born. And now it is yours. 1 tin can, 8 cloves, 1 charcoal disc, 15 minutes of setup. That is the entire price of admission. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Did anyone in your family, a grandparent, an older neighbor, somebody from a different generation ever burn something on the porch on summer evenings? What was it? What did they call it? I believe there is more useful, preserved, practical knowledge sitting in the memories of this audience than in any database I could search. Tell me where your family was from and what they used. And if you believe the way I do, that's simple. Honest methods deserve to be remembered and shared. Then subscribe and come back. Next week, I am releasing the natural method for keeping your entire garden pest-free through August without a single synthetic compound. A method documented by a Virginia farmer in 1908 that the Virginia Cooperative Extension referenced once in 1921 and never mentioned again. You will not need a single product from a garden center. I will see you there.